'Tis the season for nano prep. Hi, welcome back to my channel. I am Colleen Delaney. I am a writer, and let's get ready for Nanowrimo. So if you're not familiar, Nanowrimo is National Novel Writing Month, where people all over the world attempt to write a 50,000 word manuscript in 1 month. I have completed Nanowrimo 2 or 3 times. I can't remember. I think 2 times completed it. I've attempted it 7-ish times, I believe. And some years I've done really well and not finished. I think I've only finished twice, because I know 1 year I used it to complete a novel I had already done quite a bit of work on. So I ended up only writing about 35,000 words, and then the novel was finished, so I counted that as a win. Last year I did not complete it. I attempted to begin it. I started one project and wrote about 5,000 words and then decided the project wasn't working for me. I started another project and wrote about 10,000 words and then decided that 2020 was not a year that Nano was going to be completed by this person. So I'm going into 2021 with a lot more confidence that I'll be able to get it done. I have children in school some days, which will help, and we'll see what happens. But this video is just gonna be about my 5 biggest tips for getting your writing done and how to prepare yourself to have a successful November. Obviously, this video is gonna be about people who are planners and not pantsers. Planners are the people that like to get stuff done beforehand and go into writing a novel with a lot of support. And pantsers are people who just like to sit down and write a novel. I'm not one of those people. So my first tip is something that you would do way before you started writing, and that is to create sort of like an aesthetic of your novel. So when you think about the idea you have, come up with visually what you want it to look like in your brain. So I do 2 different things for this, to prepare for this. I first make myself some sort of collage, and depending on what book I'm working on, sometimes it's a whole Pinterest board, sometimes it's a 9-picture collage, sometimes it's a 5-picture collage. You can use Pinterest, as I said before, is really easy, especially if you want to have a ton of images. That's easy to have a ton on a board. You can use Canva, has some good picture collages you can use. You can use Be Funky, which if you just Google it, that's got a really good 9-image template, which I like to use. If you're looking for images to put in here, I recommend Pinterest. I recommend Tumblr. You can find a lot of cool images on there. And then like random stuff. Like I remember I was looking for like inspiration for what one of the heroines looked like in a book I was working on that I actually never ended up finishing. But I ended up finding this woman who's like a very specific knitwear model, and she's Norwegian. And then for a long time I got tons of ads on Norwegian knitwear because I saved a bunch of pictures of her. I also like to write out phrases that I think will be important in the story. So I have a notebook, and then I'll write out just, random stuff I want to make sure I include. So basically, let's take a book I've already written. Okay, so my book, Something Wicked, which is a like fall Halloween romance. But going into it, I knew I wanted there to be a corn maze and a farmer's market. And I wrote down a bunch of different foods that I thought would be good to add into the story. I knew that I wanted to talk about lobster rolls because it takes place in New Hampshire. I knew that the heroine was going to be a really good cook, so I wanted to remember that she had like a chili recipe, and she had an apple pie recipe and a cornbread recipe. So I would write down those types of things that aren't really part of the plot, but you definitely want to work in there just so that visually I'd have it next to my computer when I was working, and if I got stuck, I could take a look at that and hopefully it would spark something in my brain. So my second piece of advice is some prep work that does take some time, and if you are at a point where you don't want to do this yet, I would recommend reading these books before you do your second draft. And there's 2, depending on what genre you write in. The first is Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody. This is a fantastic writing book. It will really, really help you in terms of making sure your plot beats are in the correct order and that you're not missing any. I read this after I wrote the first couple drafts of the book that I have that's coming out in 2024. And after I read it, I restructured the second act. And then after that was when I got my publishing deal. Before that, I had sent it out to agents and small publishing houses and gotten rejections. But this book really saved the second act. I would recommend like actually reading the book, not just looking at the plot beats and going from there, because there's a lot of amazing information in here. My favorite part is that she takes examples that are really well known and then shows you what part of that book is what plot beat. So Harry Potter, I think, is one of the examples. I know The Martian is one. It really helps you figure out how to get the rhythm correct in your story. So that's Dave the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody. The next book specifically is helpful for romance writers, and I really recommend this if you are writing romance, and that is Romancing the Beat by Gwen Hayes. It's much shorter, as you can tell, because it's only for romance, and it really shows you how to structure your romance novel. You know, if you're reading a romance novel and you're at 80% and everything's happy and lovely, you know as a reader that you don't have another 20% of the book in which they just are happy. You don't have an epilogue that's 20% of the book. So there are things that need to happen at certain points for it to feel like a romance novel and for the reader to get the payoff of the relationship working out. So that's Romancing the Beat by Gwen Hayes. The subtitle is How to Write Kissing Books. All right, my third nano tip is to create a playlist. And it's not just so you have like a good time creating a playlist that has the sort of vibes you want your book to have, but also it's sort of a way to trick your brain. Like when you're listening to this music, you are working. So I do this with every single book that I write, and sometimes I'll have like a playlist for a series that I'll work with. I've done that with my witch books that I've been working on, but I always listen to it when I'm working, and it really helps kind of click my brain on. Now, depending on what type of writing you're doing for the day, I would recommend sometimes having music that does not have any lyrics. So if I'm working really hard and I really need to be focused, which is basically what the entire month of Nano is. There's a helicopter going past. I live really close to a hospital. So basically, when I write during Nano, every time I write, I'm hyper focused. When I'm writing a book and it's not Nano and I'm stretching out, I'm gonna take 2 to 3 months to write an 80,000 word manuscript. It's not like as densely focused as writing 50,000 words in a month. So I will often only listen to instrumental music because sometimes when I'm listening to lyrical music, my mind wanders a little bit easier. If this doesn't happen to you, don't worry about it. If you don't want to take the time to create a playlist, or you're like, I don't like to listen to lyrical music when I'm writing, but I don't have a huge breadth of knowledge when it comes to instrumental music, your best friends are YouTube and Spotify. My favorite current playlists on YouTube are this account Selena, and I'll link her in the description. But she has these great playlists that are like POV, you're a heartbroken mermaid, and they're really good instrumental. There's some singing in them that's not like super overpowering. I really like those. You can find every single playlist you can think of on YouTube. You want to write a Viking story, you can find a playlist. You want to write something that takes place in 1850 China, you can find a playlist. You want to write a space opera, you can find a playlist. It's really just a wealth of options. Same thing with Spotify. I mean, this summer when I was reading Circe, I was sitting in my backyard and I wanted to have some background music on, and I typed Circe into Spotify and I got a playlist that was like music to listen to while you're reading Circe. You can really find anything on those two places. Also, if you don't really want any sort of overpowering music, I would recommend like a focus playlist on Spotify, which will be usually like a lo-fi music that will keep you extremely focused, or you can do like an ambient sounds video. If you are writing something that takes place in winter, put on one of those soundscapes that's like a winter blizzard, all that kind of background noise, which sort of helps keep you focused. If you have headphones on, it will drown out the rest of the world, which will help you really stick with your writing. My fourth tip is to make a writing schedule. Now, you won't necessarily be able to stick with this no matter what, because we all have lives and we all have families and jobs and other things going on. But if you know that morning is always going to be a good time for you, right? Like you're an early bird and you don't have to be at work till 8 o'clock. If you know like 6:30 in the morning is always a good time for you to write, then plan that. For me personally, I have to get up early with my kids, and I am not good at getting up earlier than I need to. I'm also not good at staying up extremely late and being able to focus. So I know that for me, I'm gonna write when my kids are at school, and I'm going to write in the evening before they go to bed. So I will usually have them play outside after we eat dinner for about 45 minutes, and I can sit and put my headphones on and write for 45 minutes. A good thing to keep in mind for Nano is Nano's not won by people who have 5 hours a day to write. It's won by people who can sit down and just pour words out for 30 minutes to an hour when they can and get a ton of words written. I'm a big fan of setting a timer when I'm working on Nano, even if it's a weekend day and my kids are gone with my husband somewhere and I have like a 3-hour time period where I'm gonna be able to write. I don't sit down and say to myself, I'm gonna write for 3 hours, because when I do that, I check my email, I go on Twitter, I go through YouTube and add stuff to my watch later playlist instead of just listening to the playlist I'm supposed to be listening to. I like to set my timer for 25 to 30 minutes and stay hyper focused for that time. Then I take a 5 to 10 minute break, and then I come back. To stay on track for Nano, you do need to write 1,667 words a day. So you figure out how much time you need to write that, and then you find pockets throughout the day where you can get that word count in. And my 5th tip is to have your space ready. Now, you're probably not gonna write in the exact same place every single day, because if you're like the majority of people now, you have a laptop. So you might write at your kitchen table, you might write in your bed, you might write at your desk, your couch, whatever. I would just recommend having one spot that's always sort of available to write. So if you have a desk, make sure it's tidy so that it's not like you sit down and you're like, oh my God, it's a mess, I need to clean it before I even start writing. Just keep it tidy for the month of November, and then you can just be a slob in December. Also, before you sit down, go to the bathroom before you sit down, get yourself something to drink. Even if you don't think you're gonna be thirsty, you don't wanna be 10 minutes into writing and just all you can think about is that you're thirsty or like you've got a tickle in your throat. Just have a glass of water or a glass of tea or whatever you like next to your computer before you start writing. Have all your materials ready. If you like to look at an outline, have your outline ready. If you like to have a notebook with notes next to it, have it all ready so that you're not starting your writing and then going back and wasting time opening everything. I also really like to light a specific candle when I'm writing a certain story. I have like a candle for different books so that the smell memory also kicks my brain into gear. It's time to write. So I get the music and the scent. If you are not a candle person, you can do perfume, you can do essential oils. That just turns your brain on. This is time to write, and this is time to write this specific story. So I have certain candles. I have this great candle I love called Sweater Weather that I used when I was writing my book, Good Enough to Eat, which is my Thanksgiving novella. I'm not gonna use it for the book I'm writing in November because it makes me think about that Thanksgiving novella. I bought a new candle from Target last week, specifically for this year's Nanowrimo. Okay, and those are my 5 tips. I will definitely be checking in more about Nano throughout the whole month. I am personally still deciding between 2 different books to write. I had it at 3 and I think I've narrowed it down to 2, but you know, you go back and forth and you wanna make sure you're super motivated and you're super into what you're working on and not have your brain wishing you were working on something else. If you are doing Nano, please say hi in the comments. Let's chat. Let's do some write with me's together to get each other motivated through the month. I feel like when you have friends who are also doing it, it really helps get your words in. I'm a competitive person. If I'm checking in with people to tell them how many words I've written, I'm definitely hitting my word count every single day. Have a lovely day. See ya.